Okay, so at some point someone's looked at you, all good intentions, and told you that you're overthinking it. Just let it go. And you nodded because what else do you say to that, right? But if you could let it go, you'd have done it ages ago. It's kind of a pointless thing to say. Nobody chooses this. No one chooses to not be able to let something go. So this is what I want to argue today. Your overthinking brain is special needs. And I mean that literally. A brain built with a different set of needs than the usual one. Let's dive in. 1. A brain that runs deeper. Now, I know calling it that sounds a little harsh, and I'm not trying to be provocative for the sake of it. I mean, I'm special needs. I need some special things, and that's not a bad thing. I just want to make sure that you know it's the most accurate way to describe what's actually going on in there, and the more of the research that you read and that you listen to, the harder it is to see it any other way. And having special needs is pretty much how everyone functions, but this is something we all kind of do without even noticing, right? When someone turns out to be an overthinker, we tell them to treat it as a thing to switch off. Just stop thinking, calm down, stop spiraling, get out of your head, go touch some grass. And it all sounds caring enough. I mean, maybe not the touching grass part, but underneath it, there's this assumption that overthinking is a malfunction. Like there's a normal brain that went a bit wrong somewhere and needs fixing. You shouldn't be overthinking. But that's not what the research shows. These brains are not broken, they're wired differently from the ground up, and once you see how, the whole urge to smother this kind of falls apart. Let's start with the trait underneath all of this. Back in the 90s, a psychologist named Elaine Aron started studying what she called sensory processing sensitivity. She found out that around 1 in 5 people are just built to take the world in a bit more deeply than everyone else. They pull more out of any given moment, they hold on to it longer, they get overwhelmed a bit more easily when there's too much going on, they feel their emotions more strongly, their sensations, they notice all of the little things that other people tend to miss or ignore. What's interesting is that this trait is not specific to humans alone. We've actually found the same trait in over 100 other animals, from fish to birds to dogs to monkeys. In just about any group of animals, there's a smaller percentage of them that is more watchful than the rest. It's wired deep into how living things work, and it's stuck around because it's useful. But the part that really sold me on this trait being more than just a personality quirk is what shows up when you actually look inside the head. It's all gooey and squishy in there. But your brain has this network that kicks in whenever you're not really busy with anything. The one that runs your inner monologue. It replays the day on your walk home. It narrates your life back to you. Notice how it kind of talks to you in your words or in meanings. You can analyze your own mind and see how it really talks. Researchers call this the default mode network, and it's basically where all that self-focused thinking lives. Think of the ego, right? Think of this self-rumination, where you're stuck replaying things, and this network is wired more tightly into the deeper emotional parts of the brain for these types of people than it is for everyone else. Basically, you're better at introspection, or thinking deeply about something. A researcher named Paul Hamilton pulled a lot of this work together, and he found that the strength of that wiring corresponds with how much someone ruminates on anything. So the looping isn't just this bad habit that you picked up and could drop with a bit more willpower, it's built into the way the thing is wired. And yeah, it does contribute to some anxiety and some other not so fun things, but it's pretty neat as well. There are plenty of advantages to having the ability to ruminate more deeply and more specifically. A psychologist named Alexander Penny looked into the link between intelligence and rumination. He found that the people who worry and ruminate the most tend to score higher on verbal intelligence tests. The word and language kind specifically, because when they measured a more visual, hands-on sort of intelligence, the link actually went the other way. There's also older work from a researcher named Jeremy Koplan pointing somewhere similar, where in people who actually had an anxiety disorder, the more worrying lined up with a higher IQ instead of a lower one. Yeah, being smarter is actually correlated to worrying more and having more anxiety. The smarter you are, the more anxious you can be. But these are the same traits that let you write something that really gets to people, or put the correct words together to explain how you feel, or to argue both sides of something in your head to really deeply analyze it. And it's the same trait that keeps you up at night replaying a conversation from last Tuesday, word for word, and trying to think your way out of it. Oh, I could have said this, I could have said that. This was always one system, and a pretty capable one. It just never came with an off switch. But hey, you can talk to yourself inside your own head, and that's pretty cool. Now, before you start thinking that all of this makes overthinkers some kind of secret genius, the picture is not all sunshine and roses, as you probably already know. The link between worry and intelligence is pretty messy, and in people who don't have an anxiety disorder, it can actually also run the other way, where more brains come with less worrying. Past a certain point, though, all of that thinking stops helping and starts working against you. The machinery behind all that thinking is real, and a lot of people are simply born running it without a manual on how to concentrate it or turn it off or make sure that it doesn't make you stay awake at night worrying about things. There's nothing in there that you actually need to keep apologizing for, is what I'm saying. So that's really all I mean by special needs, a brain with genuinely different requirements from the majority, so it just needs to be handled a little differently than most. There's nothing wrong with having one, it just needs to be regulated and run properly. You get to learn how to use your own brain as an actual tool, which is pretty cool if you think about it. But this is where it all goes sideways because almost nobody runs this tool properly. It kind of just goes on autopilot most of the time. Your teachers, people on the internet, your well-meaning friends, even you, most of the time, all keep reaching for the same instruction manual that everyone else uses. Oh, they all know how to use their brain the right way. Well, actually, I don't think that most people think that nowadays, but in general, most people are just on autopilot, allowing their brains to tell them what to do. And for a brain like yours, this manual, this concept of a manual, doesn't just fail you in general, it slowly makes things worse until you come out the other end convinced that you're the one who's broken. There's gotta be a manual, there's gotta be an instruction booklet for how to use this brain properly. But no, that's not a thing, and there never was a manual like that. So here we get to 2, why the usual advice backfires. So think about what people actually tell you when you admit that you can't stop turning something over in your head. Oh, relax, don't worry about it so much, get out of your head, be present, picture it going well, manifest or whatever. It all sounds reasonable enough, and it's all said with love, for the most part. And for a lot of people, it honestly works completely fine. They can, in general, stop worrying about something or get distracted by something else, or they can try to move their mind in a different direction, but it's a lot harder for some people. The trouble is, for a brain like yours, this advice tends to do pretty much the opposite of what it promises. Trying to force your brain in a specific direction kind of makes it do more of the same. We treat this advice from other people like it's a law of nature, as if all humans work the same, but they don't, obviously. A psychologist named Julie Norham spent years showing that it doesn't work like that. She'd been following a group of anxious, high-strung people who performed really well, and she noticed that they all did the same slightly odd thing right before doing anything important. What they did was let their mind walk them through every possible way that it could go wrong, in detail, instead of hyping themselves up or breathing through it or concentrating or letting your mind drift and relaxing the way that you're quote-unquote supposed to. Before this big presentation or whatever, their head would show them freezing up or going blank on their notes or getting that one question they couldn't answer. It would immediately go right to all the ways they could fail. Norham called this defensive pessimism, and on paper, it looks like the exact habit that everyone else does, right? Everyone, of course, does this. Oh wait, no, that's just me. Oops. On paper, this looks like how every self-help book on earth is begging you to drop this habit and, oh, you should focus on the positive, but some people just think like this, and I can't help it, Mom, alright? So, Norham brought these people into a lab, and it turned out that the worrying was the thing holding their whole performance together. She'd give them a task, something like a set of word puzzles, and sort them into groups beforehand. One group she had purposely relax and picture it all going smoothly and focusing on the positive aspects and have that calm, positive approach we all get told to use. The other she just left alone to do their natural thing. And what she found was that the relaxed, positive group actually statistically did worse, while the worriers did better. When she let their brain get ready the way that it was used to and that it wanted to, by going through the disaster scenarios in detail, they came prepared for it, and they walked through all these ways it could go wrong, and then they did the alternative. When she took that away from them and told them to act and think positively and handed them the sunny mindset that really does help most people, the whole thing just kind of came apart for them and it didn't help their performance. Not that performance is the end-all be-all of how you should live your life, but it is something. This ran in reverse too, which is part of what really makes it stick. The naturally upbeat people, the people who do their best work loose and optimistic, got worse the moment she made them stop and mull over everything that could go wrong. Hey, positive, sunny, sunshine person, why don't you think of all the scenarios in which this could go catastrophically wrong? And then she got them worrying, and then they did worse at their tests. So, the same instruction helped one sort of person and threw off another, which means that there isn't a single mental setting that works for everyone, and all this generic advice we hand out, like it applies to all of us, was only ever right for a few of us, or some of us, or not me. This is the bigger problem going on with how we deal with overthinking in general. The whole self-help machine is basically trying to sell us on one move, and that is to always do less of it. Push the bad thoughts away, empty your head, distract yourself until the feeling passes, force yourself to think those positive thoughts. And even distraction, which is the first thing most people go for, does a lot less than you'd hope. When researchers actually checked whether distracting yourself from your problems brings the gloom down over the long run, the results came back shaky and kind of all over the place. It might buy you a bit of relief in the moment, but as a real fix, it mostly doesn't do much, and it's much harder to habitualize yourself into positive thinking than it seems. And here's what years of this slowly actually does to a person. You try the advice, you really do try to relax and let go and think positive, because the people handing it to you love you and they seem so sure that it works, and thinking positively seems like a good idea, right? But it doesn't, because for you, it can't. So you try harder and it still doesn't do anything, and then this kind of loops back into your natural way of thinking, which is, why doesn't this work? Why can't I do this correctly? Why isn't it? Am I broken? Am I wrong? And then you do that whole defensive pessimism thing. So somewhere along the way, you slowly stop blaming the advice and, yep, you start blaming yourself, because everyone else seems to manage it without much trouble, or so it seems. You decide that there's something wrong with you specifically, when really you were just running the wrong manual for your hardware the entire time. And your brain keeps running the entire time with the actual firmware working as it should in the background underneath your attempts to have this sunny disposition. There's nothing good to point it at, so it slowly turns around and points at you, which is right about where the real damage starts. 3. When the thinking turns on you. So, what does all of that actually do to a person? A deep brain pointed inward with no real way out. We don't really have to guess here, because this might be the single most studied corner of the whole topic. Nobody spent more time inside this circling, replaying style of thinking than a psychologist named Susan Nolan Hoeksema. The first thing the circling does is take whatever you're already feeling and crank it up, and then make it last a lot longer. In her experiments, she'd put people into a slightly low mood and have one group dwell on how they were feeling, while another group went and did something distracting. The ones who dwelled came out gloomier, faster at pulling up bad memories, and bleaker about what was coming. So a normal bad day turns into a heavier bad one that you can't stop thinking about. The second thing genuinely stings because it goes right at the one thing you'd assume all that circling is buying you. When you're going round and round on a problem, it really feels like you're working on it, just like if you think hard enough, you'll crack it. But when Nolan Hoeksema tested that directly, the people who ruminated came up with worse solutions to their own problems, and they felt less able to actually go out and do anything about them. So the replaying feels like problem solving, while it's actually the very thing keeping you from solving anything. And while it may be useful for some tests, it might not be so useful for real-life scenarios. The third one is the sneaky one, where it slowly drags everything from the specific up into the abstract. You start with one real specific thing, a single conversation that went badly, or one mistake at work, whatever it is, and the longer the loop runs, the bigger and blurrier the conclusion gets. That meeting went badly slowly becomes, I'm bad at my job, which becomes, I'm just a failure. Your mind climbs all the way up from a single thing that actually happened to a sweeping verdict on who you are as a person. And you can do something about a bad meeting, but there's nothing you can really do about feeling like you're being a failure as a whole human being. So you just end up hauling this trauma and this anxiety around with you. And these verdicts poison everything after them. Because once your brain has decided that the problem is you, the entire person, every small thing that you could do stops feeling worth the effort. Why go for a walk? Why send the message? Why try the new thing? Why do that single, small, actionable item when none of this touches something as big as being a failure as a whole? So you don't do any of it. The drive to take any real step just drains out of you, and then the not doing becomes more evidence for the story that you're telling yourself, more proof that you're stuck, which loops you right back to the start again. And maybe the hardest part of all of this is the way the circling makes you miss your own way out. When you're deep in this, you actually get worse at noticing the things around you that could pull you loose. Someone offers you an opening, or something good happens right in front of you, or there's real evidence sitting there that the bleak story you've built isn't the whole picture, and it slides right past you because all of your attention is aimed inward at this loop instead of out at the world that's trying to hand you something. And then there's the long-term finding, which is the serious one. After following people for years, Nolan Hoeksema found that the circling tends to show up first, and the depression comes after it, if you get there, which I have some experience with. The more someone ruminates, the more likely they were to slide into depression down the road, even the ones who started out perfectly fine. A 2013 study led by a researcher named Laura Mitchell traced that same path into anxiety, with the replaying acting as the bridge that carries a stressful event over into the symptoms that follow. And it reaches wider than depression and anxiety too, because this same style of thinking shows up tangled into eating problems, drinking, self-harm, and many other problems. As warning signs go, it's one of the most reliable ones we've got that things are headed somewhere dark. None of this is secretly good for you. The pain here is real, and it's really not your fault. But here's the part that I want you to hold on to through all of it. Every single thing I just walked you through is being done by that same deep, capable brain from the start of the video, the one that notices everything and follows every thought all the way to the end and does better on problems and can think up solutions and can figure out what might go wrong. This is the same brain here. It's just been pointed at you, and if your brain is doing its own thing without you trying to guide it, with no exit, it can push your positive feelings away, and you can find yourself falling deeper and deeper into anxiety and depression, and your brain can push yourself way too hard for years and tell yourself that you're the problem to get rid of. So yeah, that is really the part that finishes people off. You take a brain built to go deep into something, and you give it nothing good to go deep on, and you allow it to go deep into things that are not so great, and you tell it to stop over and over while it physically can't, and that's not the right solution. So in the end, all it does is the thing that it has left, which is focus on you. You, your ego, your abilities, the things you've done wrong. And when it comes back and hands you its generic conclusion that you're broken, that something is fundamentally wrong with you underneath all of it, you believe it because it's your own brain telling you that. Because look how thorough it was. It went through all this evidence, it dug all this up just to make the case for you. The same thoroughness that should have been the best thing about you and should have been helping the world and yourself ends up being the thing that turns you against yourself. But this conclusion is wrong. And here's the first hint of why. And it's not just because I'm telling you to cheer you up like, oh, you're actually not a failure. Nobody's a failure, but let me get to it. This circling that does all the damage and the deep, careful thinking behind some of the most thoughtful people who've ever lived, it's actually running on the same machinery, just headed in two different directions. From the inside, these two aspects can feel almost identical, which is exactly why nobody ever taught you to tell them apart. When you're noticing that your brain is going one direction, you're able to switch it into another direction through willpower, but it's hard to tell what your brain is doing when it feels like you're the one doing it. One direction of this slowly wears you down, the other allows you to think some of the most clear, useful thoughts you've ever done. And the whole difference between these two comes down to one small thing, something almost everyone misses, but once you can see it, you can finally start steering the machine instead of getting dragged around by it. So let's get into what that difference actually is. So here's that difference, and it's almost annoying how simple it is once it's sitting in front of you. For a long time, researchers treated all this looping as one single thing, this rumination that was just bad for you straight across the board. But Susan Nolan Hoeksema, together with a colleague named Wendy Traynor, found that what everyone had been calling one thing was actually two things. The first one they called brooding. This is the passive, stuck sort of looping, the one that circles the drain without ever really getting anywhere. It's the voice in your head asking, why? Why does this always happen to me? Why am I like this? Why can't I just be normal like everyone else? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why is it like this? And when they followed people over time, brooding was the one thing doing the brunt of the damage. The second thing they called reflection, and from the outside it looks almost identical, the same person clearly lost in thought about something heavy, but the questions it's asking are completely different. Reflection asks, what? What actually happened here? What is this trying to tell me? What could I do about it? What is this scenario like? What are the factors? What are the ways to fix it? And that way of thinking wasn't tied to people getting worse, it was tied to them working through things and coming out the other side a bit better off. And this is where it loops back to something from the very start of this. Paul Hamilton, the same researcher from earlier, showed that when the default mode network is running the show, it lines up with the brooding kind of thinking and against the reflective kind. Which brings me to the thing I really need you to hear, that wiring in your brain was never a sentence handed down to you, because the exact same machinery running the loop that wears you down is also running the clearest, most useful thinking you'll ever do. You were never broken, you were just stuck in one of the two gears almost all the time, because no one ever mentioned that there was a second one, let alone showed you how to get into it. There's even a halfway decent argument for why your brain clamps down like this and won't let go, no matter how much you beg it to. A couple of other researchers, Paul Andrews and Anderson Thompson, have made the case that this deep, grinding focus actually evolved to work on exactly the problems that don't come with quick answers, the complicated, usually personal ones. It's a contested idea, and I'm not going to pretend this whole thing is settled, but it does fit something you already know from the inside, which is that the loop always clamps down the hardest on the things you care about the most, and point blank refuses to quit. It was never trying to hurt you, it's your own brain. It just does its own thing, and it's been trying to solve something the whole time. It's just been going about it in the one gear that can't actually solve anything. So the move was never to shut the brain off, which you've probably spent years trying to do anyway, and which we've already covered that it basically can't do. What actually works is catching which gear you're in and nudging it toward the other one. Catch the why is it like this, why, oh no, and start going towards what can I do about it, what is going on, what. And the quickest tell is right there in the question your head is asking. If it's a why, you're brooding, and those questions feel deep, but they'll just circle that drain. There's no floor. You can't actually reach anything. There's no answer to why. You can fall through forever without ever hitting the bottom. The moment you can trade this state of mind for a what and ask what to do, what to put in, what to fit, what puzzle pieces, even something as small as what's one thing I could just do right now about this problem, you've pointed that same engine at something solid enough to stand on. It works the same way with worrying too. That habit of running every worst case scenario, this defensive pessimism from earlier we talked about, you don't kill that one either, you put it to work on purpose. You use that natural ability and skill and you do something with it. You take the disaster that your brain keeps drafting in the background and you drag it out into the open, you write the worst cases down, you analyze it, you figure out what you'd actually do about each one. Same anxious brain, except now it's getting you ready for things instead of just scaring you with them. I do want to be straight that this isn't a switch that you flip once and you're sorted for life. It's not that easy. Reflection can slide right back into brooding without you even noticing, and there is no hard line here. On a bad day, you'll catch yourself circling the why again like you never learned a thing. This skill was never about stopping the brooding completely, because you won't, you can't. It's just about catching it a bit sooner each time and purposely moving your thoughts in a direction that feels healthier. And it's just about turning yourself around a bit faster than you managed the time before and giving yourself definitive things to do. So, where does all of this actually leave us? Let me start off by saying thanks for watching, like and subscribe, but also, if your overthinking has gone well past the everyday and is genuinely flattening your weeks and leading to some genuine depression, then a video is not going to be the thing that fixes that. Definitely talk to someone that helps. I'm a YouTube channel, I can't really do much about that. Life is worth living, etc., etc. There's no shame at all in actually going and talking to someone whose actual job is emotional intelligence and therapy and helping you through that kind of thing. What I've got here is more entertaining and is helpful, but it's more for the everyday, regular looping, the sort that grinds you down without fully pulling you under, and this will be a video that is hopefully entertaining and ingrains this concept into your mind for you to ruminate on later. Here's the thing to understand. Overthinking isn't a single problem. It's a few different problems that we just lump under one word, which is part of why no single piece of advice ever fixed it for you. So instead of one big fix, it's more about spotting which one you're doing and having a move ready for it. First things first is that when you catch yourself looping, listen to how that question in your head is phrased, how you present it to yourself. Most of the time, when it's the bad kind, it starts with why. Why does this always happen? Why am I like this? Why did I say that? Those questions feel deep, but they don't actually go anywhere. They just spin for hours and you go out the other side knowing nothing new. So when you catch a why, try to turn it into a what. What's actually bothering me here? What's one thing I could do about it? I know this sounds too simple to be worth much, but it's a simple exercise that can actually help. This little swap can make a whole lot of difference once you start doing it. Another thing you can do instead of fighting it is to get the worst case scenarios out of your head and onto paper, and next to each one, write down what you'd actually do if it happened. Writing things down, analyzing, drawing it out, and seeing what the scenario looks like. I do want to be honest about what these actually do, because I'm not going to sell you a cure or anything. None of this makes the overthinking stop. That is part of who you are. You'll still catch yourself spinning on a why at 1 a.m., probably for the rest of your life. The point was never to switch the thing off. Your brain is going to be on for the rest of time. Your time, that is. The point is, you'll catch this habit a little sooner each time, and you turn yourself a little faster around than you did before. It's not a small thing, but it is the difference between your overthinking controlling you and you having some control over it. Because that's really the whole thing I wanted to get across. You were handed this deep, powerful brain, and everyone keeps telling you to silence it, to smother it, to force it in a single direction, and everyone kept telling you to silence it, to smother it, to make it more like everyone else's, to be more normal, and that was never going to work. You gotta give it coping mechanisms, sure, but you also have to give it techniques, and you have to have abilities that you practice, and you develop these tools inside your own mind that help you over time. That's all special needs ever really meant. It was never a worse brain that needs medication or anything, only one that needs to be managed more carefully, consciously, specifically, given the ability and advice that matches your specific brain state. And here's a question I want to leave you with. What if it isn't only your thinking that seems to run deeper than everyone else's? What if your whole timeline does too? A lot of people look around at everyone their age, they seem to be moving faster, getting the job, the relationship, they seem to be your age, but they're doing so much better their whole life. And then someone watching is deciding that it's actually them that's at fault. They're behind. They missed something. They're just slow. They're a failure. And it's not the case. The research has something genuinely strange to say about this phenomenon and about how this actually ends up and where these people end up. So that video is right somewhere. And if this video was useful to you, then that one will be too. I'll see you over there. Like and subscribe. And I want to see you in that video. So peace. Hey.